You know that feeling when you think you're more evolved than the people around you? That thought that creeps in when you meditate more, read more about spirituality, or attend more spiritual practices and rituals? Well, God has an interesting way of showing us that this might be exactly the sign that we're straying from the true spiritual path. And I'm not saying this lightly. Right now, thousands of sincere people on their spiritual journey are unknowingly falling into traps that are actually distancing them from their true divine connection. The most concerning part? They firmly believe they're making progress. There's a side of spirituality that very few people dare to talk about. These traps are so subtle, so well disguised, that even the most dedicated seekers can spend years, sometimes decades, caught in them. It's like wearing the wrong colored glasses. The longer you wear them, the more you get used to seeing the world in that distorted way. Hi, I'm Andrew Summerham. Today, I'm going to share something I've learned after years of observation and spiritual experience. The 9 spiritual sins that might be silently sabotaging your divine connection. No, this isn't just another video with the basic tips you already know. This is a deep dive into aspects that usually go unnoticed, but might be preventing you from reaching a deeper connection with your spiritual essence. If you're truly committed to evolving on your journey, you need to know each of these traps, not just to avoid them, but because the simple act of recognizing them in your life is already a powerful step toward true transformation. Prepare your heart and maybe grab a notebook, because what I'm about to share might completely change how you view your own spiritual journey. You know when you start feeling like you're getting more spiritualized and, without meaning to, you begin looking down on others? It's that moment when you catch yourself thinking, wow, this person really needs to evolve, or what heavy karma this person must have. Well, friend, God has an ironic way of showing us that this might be exactly when we're furthest from true wisdom. It's like that story about the cup. The fuller it is, the less space it has to receive anything new. Have you noticed how truly enlightened people are the most humble? It's no coincidence. The closer we get to the divine, the more we realize how much we still have to learn. It's like climbing a mountain. The higher you go, the more you see there is to explore. In daily life, this spiritual pride shows up in the smallest details. It's when you get irritated because someone questions your beliefs, when you think your way of meditating is the right one, or when you catch yourself judging others' faith. These are subtle moments, almost imperceptible, but they create an invisible barrier between you and your true spiritual evolution. The most interesting part is that God often uses the very people we judge as less evolved to give us our greatest lessons. That coworker you consider non-spiritual might be exactly the one who'll teach you about true compassion. That person you think has no knowledge might be the one who shows you what genuine faith looks like. It's as if the universe has a very particular sense of humor when it comes to teaching us about humility. Have you ever caught yourself trying to control absolutely everything in your spiritual life? It's that story of, if I meditate for exactly 30 minutes a day, perform all rituals at the right time, follow all the rules perfectly, I'll achieve enlightenment. And then, when something goes off script, it feels like the world is falling apart. You know what's funny? God must get quite a laugh watching our attempts to micromanage the divine. It's like trying to fit the entire ocean into a water bottle. Impossible, right? But how many times do we try to do exactly that with our spirituality? We want to fit the infinite into our limited boxes of understanding. We plan every step of our spiritual evolution as if we were organizing an Excel spreadsheet. Look at real life. You plan to do your spiritual practice in the morning, but your child wakes up sick. You schedule that amazing retreat, but an unavoidable commitment comes up. You set rigid spiritual goals, but life insists on showing you different paths. And you know what's most interesting? Usually, it's exactly in these moments of getting off track that the biggest transformations happen. The universe has a very particular way of showing us that we're not the ones in control. That delay that irritated you might have been exactly what prevented you from being in the wrong place at the wrong time. That plan that went wrong might have protected you from something you can't even imagine. It's as if God is always reminding us, relax, my child. I have a plan bigger than your schedule. Have you noticed how easy it is to fall into that vibe of everything is wrong, the world is lost, people only think about evil? It's that moment when you consider yourself super spiritual, but spend the entire day complaining about life. Seems contradictory, doesn't it? It's like lighting a candle for God with one hand while spreading darkness with the other. You know those people who seem to carry their own personal storm cloud? They're the ones who start the day complaining about traffic, then complain about work, later about family, and still say they're just venting. Truth is, this constant negativity is like putting a dark filter over your soul's eyes. Everything appears gloomier than it really is. In daily life, this shows up in very subtle ways. It's when you catch yourself making that harsh comment about your neighbor, when you turn a minor setback into a huge drama, or when you spend hours sharing negative news on social media. And the most curious part? Often we do this thinking we're warning people or being realistic. But you know what's most interesting? God didn't put us here to be commentators of darkness, but bearers of light. When you spend the day focusing on what's wrong, you're practically closing the curtains to the sunbeams trying to enter your life. It's like telling the universe, no thanks. I prefer to stay here under my personal little rain cloud. Have you noticed how we love talking about spiritual evolution, but when challenges get real, our first reaction is to run? It's that story. We want to grow, but without pain. We want to evolve, but without discomfort. We want transformation, but only if it's painless. Funny how God has a special way of showing us that's not quite how it works. It's like the story of the butterfly cocoon. If you help the butterfly get out, thinking you're being kind, it will never be able to fly. You know why? It's precisely the struggle to break free from the cocoon that strengthens its wings. But how many times do we try to escape our own struggles? Those difficult conversations that need to happen, those decisions that need to be made, those fears that need to be faced. In real life, this shows up in various ways. It's when you avoid looking at your shadows for fear of what you'll find. When you change jobs every time a conflict arises. When you end relationships at the first sign of challenge. Or when you jump from one spiritual practice to another whenever things start getting too deep. It's like we're always looking for the smoothest path, even knowing it's not always the most transformative. And you know what's most curious? It's usually in moments of greatest discomfort that God operates the biggest transformations. That crisis that seemed like the end of the world, it was actually the beginning of something new. That loss that hurt so much, it was space being cleared for something greater. It's as if the universe is always reminding us, sometimes what looks like destruction is actually reconstruction. Have you ever caught yourself constantly measuring yourself against others on the spiritual path? It's when you start counting how many hours you meditate compared to your friend from the spiritual group, or when you wonder why others seem to have more gifts than you. It's funny how God must look at us in these moments. Like, child, everyone is unique. Why all this competition? It's like the endless scroll of spiritual Instagram. You see someone super zen posting meditation photos on the beach, another sharing deep revelations, someone else who seems to always be at peace. And then comes that feeling that your spirituality is somehow not enough. But hey, spoiler alert, that perfect meditation photo probably took half an hour to set up, and the person likely got into an argument right after. In everyday life, this shows up in the most subtle ways. It's when you feel lesser because your spiritual practice isn't as elaborate, when you think your connection with God isn't as special as others, or when you beat yourself up for not having as many mystical experiences as so-and-so. It's like we're always seeking external validation for something that's deeply intimate and personal. And the most interesting part, God didn't create a standard model of spirituality. Look at nature. Each flower has its way of blooming, each bird has its own song, each star shines in its unique way. Why would it be different with us? Your spiritual journey is as unique as your fingerprint. There's no other one like it in the entire universe. You know that saying about our body being God's temple? Well, sometimes we treat this temple like an old storage shed. It's funny how we become super attentive to rituals, spiritual practices, and deep studies, but completely forget to take care of our own temple. It's like trying to make an important call with a dead phone. There's no way for the energy to flow, right? In the daily rush, it all piles up. Sleepless nights, rushed meals, endless stress, body crying out for help. And we keep ignoring the signs, thinking spirituality is just about the soul. But here's something curious. God gave us a body specifically to live this earthly experience. It's like getting an amazing car and only taking care of the paint job, completely forgetting about the engine. This shows up in the small details of everyday life. It's when you chain one spiritual practice after another without stopping to rest, when you push your body beyond its limits thinking that's spiritual discipline, or when you ignore those aches that are clearly your body asking for a break. How many times have we heard stories of super spiritualized people who get seriously ill simply from neglecting the basics? And you know what's most amazing? Even Jesus took time to rest, withdrew to recharge his energy. If even he, with all his divinity, respected these moments, why do we think we can stay in spiritual warrior mode 24/7? It's as if the universe is always reminding us. Spirituality also includes taking care of this divine gift that is our body. You know that saying about forgiveness being divine? So why do we hold on to so much resentment while claiming to be on a spiritual path? It's that thing. We say our prayers, participate in rituals, talk about universal love, but just mention someone's name and our heart races. Our energy shifts instantly. Interesting how God must observe this contradiction, isn't it? It's like we're maintaining a private museum of hurts, each disappointment well cataloged, each betrayal carefully stored in memory, each harsh word preserved like a precious relic. But you don't know what they did to me. Yes, maybe so, but guess who's carrying all that weight? Only you. It's like drinking poison expecting the other person to get sick. In daily life, this shows up in the simplest details. It's when you take a huge detour at the supermarket just to avoid running into that person. When your mood completely changes just passing by a place that brings back bad memories. Or when you keep those old letters just to never forget how much you suffered. And the worst part, sometimes we do this thinking it's a form of protection. And look how curious this is. While we're there, clutching onto old hurts, God is trying to deliver new gifts, fresh blessings, incredible opportunities. But how can we receive anything with new hands if both are occupied holding on to old resentments? It's like trying to fill a cup that's already full. There's no space for anything new. Have you noticed how sometimes we get so focused on being spiritually evolved that we completely forget to be happy? It's that thing. Serious face of concentration, solemn posture, like we're carrying the weight of the world, as if smiling were a sin. But wait, wasn't it God who said, "The joy of the Lord is our strength"? Funny how we complicate what was meant to be simple, right? Look how interesting this is. Children, who they say are closer to the kingdom of heaven, live laughing and playing. Meanwhile, we, who claim to be so spiritualized, walk around with faces like we've been sucking lemons. It's as if we've created this crazy idea that being spiritual means being serious all the time. But would God, who created the colors of the rainbow, dolphins jumping, and birds singing, really want us to be so heavy all the time? In daily life, this shows up when we catch ourselves criticizing those who take life too lightly, when we turn up our noses at a celebration thinking it's too worldly, or when we stop ourselves from doing something fun, because spiritual people don't do that. How many times have we heard someone say so-and-so isn't serious just because they know how to live with lightness? And you know what's most beautiful? Nature itself teaches us about this. The sun rises every day with a different show of colors. Flowers dance with the wind without needing a reason. Even animals play with each other. It's as if the entire universe is reminding us. True spirituality also lives in genuine laughter, spontaneous dancing, and joy without reason. You know when we become so evolved that we start thinking we don't need to connect with others anymore? It's that story. I'm on my spiritual path. I only care about my evolution. But hey, is this really what God planned for us? After all, even Jesus walked with his disciples and mixed with all kinds of people, right? It's like we're building our own private spiritual tower, getting higher and higher, more isolated, more distant from others. Oh, but people don't understand me. Nobody is at the same level. And so we keep closing ourselves off, isolating ourselves, forgetting that true spirituality also manifests in a friendly hug, a compassionate look, in serving others. This shows up in daily life in very subtle ways. It's when you stop attending family gatherings because the energy isn't good, when you avoid old friendships because they're not spiritualized, or when you isolate yourself in your own high vibration bubble. And the most ironic part? Sometimes we do this thinking we're protecting ourselves, when actually we're impoverishing our souls. The most beautiful thing is that God always puts people in our path for a reason. That less evolved person might be exactly the one who will teach you about humility. That difficult family member might be your greatest teacher of patience. It's as if the universe is always reminding us, no one came to this world to shine alone. True light only grows stronger when it's shared. So how many of these spiritual sins did you catch yourself committing? Don't worry, recognizing them is the first step toward transformation. The most incredible thing is that God doesn't show us these blind spots to make us feel guilty, but to help us truly grow. Just think, what if this moment, right here and now, was your turning point? What if starting today, you began looking at your spiritual journey with different eyes? Not as a race to become the most evolved, not as a silent competition, but as a path of self-discovery and true connection with the divine. You know what's the best part? You're not alone on this journey. Every person watching this video right now is also seeking this path of transformation. That's why I want to invite you to share in the comments. Which of these spiritual sins touched your heart the most? Which one made you think, wow, that's me? Your story might be exactly what someone needed to read today. And look, if you felt this content touched your soul, don't keep it to yourself. Share it with someone else who's also seeking a more authentic spirituality. Subscribe to the channel, hit the bell icon, and let's journey together toward transformation. Every week we bring content like this that goes far beyond the surface and touches what really matters. This is just the beginning.